Charles Ponzi came to the world in Lugo, Italy on March 3, 1882. His full name is Carlo Pieto Giovanni Guglielmo Tebado Ponzi. He decides to emigrate to the New World at a young age. He came to the United States in 1903 and became one of the biggest and most famous fraudsters in the world with the system he developed himself. There have always been people like Banker Kestelli using the system developed by Charles Ponzi in Turkey. In fact, I personally believe that if the Turkish branch had met with Sülün Osman somehow, he would have done legendary things. When Ponzi arrives in 1903, he gets into every business imaginable in the United States. He decides to settle in Boston in 1917. 2 years later, in 1919, when he was preparing to publish a magazine for the export industry, he met international postal coupons. Postal coupons were a practice that came into force in 1906, under an agreement signed by more than 60 countries. The aim was that the person to whom the coupons were sent could cash them in their own country. Attracted Ponzi's interest was that these coupons had different values in different countries. In other words, an international pulp coupon worth $1 in the US could turn into up to 6 geese surplus money in another country at that time. No matter how often and with how hard he tried, the crime world did not help Charles Ponzi. His biggest venture was to raise investment by writing on the shutters of his shop in 1920s Boston, "Double your money in 90 days, or earn 45% in 45 days." Charles Ponzi's company actually does not go unnoticed by the police, but no one sees an unlawful side in what has been done. And the investors who are making incredible profits are also extremely satisfied with their lives. Ponzi later set an example for many people who dreamed of getting rich quick, in a sense, became their idol. Those who took Charles Ponzi as an example have gone so far that they have even brought huge countries to the brink of social collapse many times. The numerous Ponzi organization, pyramid organization, or chain of happiness, set up by those who follow his path, has caused tens of millions of people to earn direct sales, a purely legitimate business, to receive occasional criticism that it does not stand out at all. Aspiring investors, widows and children, as well as some businessmen, helped him raise more than $15 million in just a few months. When the cash registers were full, the short Italian immigrant began to fill the incoming banknotes in the drawers of his desk and then in the trash cans. The profit of the so-called miracle investment will come from buying International Postal Union coupons and immediately taking profits due to fluctuating exchange rates. In an article published in Zaman newspaper on September 21, 1920, Zakaria Bey stated that he bought a mansion and a car in Boston for Ponzi, which was widely spoken in those days, and that he lived like a millionaire. Needless to say, this plan did not develop as expected. It was understood that postal coupons would be issued $500,000 for the year, and no more could be issued. Ponzi started paying early investors their money, with the ones that came later. He had $4 million in his office when he was arrested, but his debt was $7 million. An article in a newspaper in 1920 that argued whether Ponzi's company was legal or not caused things to change suddenly. Legal forces prohibit Charles Ponzi from accepting deposits until the investigation is complete. Within a few hours, crowds begin to form in front of Ponzi's branches who want to withdraw their money. Though Ponzi tried to convince them with all his might, 1,000 people had already withdrawn their money from Ponzi in the evening of that day. The absence of new investors means that you will understand the end of the sweet dream here, as in every happiness chain. On August 19, 1920, Charles Ponzi officially went bankrupt. However, it turns out that 40,000 people have invested $15 million in Ponzi's company until then. Examining Ponzi's files reveals that millions of postal coupons have been purchased, but Ponzi can prove that only 2 coupons have been purchased. Ponzi gets a prison sentence for his postal coupon business. Ponzi's system essentially transfers wealth from last entrants to first entrants and those who manage the system. Ponzi's system collapsed 8 weeks later when a Boston newspaper published problems with the system's functioning. Once you start the Ponzi system and maintain it for a while, one of the ways out of this system is to go bankrupt or to soften the conditions of the game to some extent and exploit new participation. He spent only 4 months in prison for federal crime. When he was expelled, the state of Massachusetts sentenced him to 7 to 9 months in prison for fraud. On bail, Ponzi got involved in a fake sale of land in Florida this time, and was fined for a year. Meanwhile, although he was on bail, he had left the city on leave, and was caught in New Orleans. Ponzi was also convicted of letting some foreigners into the Canadian border and for fraud in Canada. After serving all his sentences, he was deported and sent to Italy in 1934. He went to Brazil before the Second World War. There he taught English lessons and received unemployment benefits from the Brazilian government. In the 1940s, Ponzi's health began to deteriorate. His right eye was almost blind. His veins hardened, blood clots formed, and he could not move his left leg with his left arm easily. But even when he was injured, at least he had good memories. He explained that by 1948 the Soviet Union was planning to defraud $2 million, promised to bring smuggled gold to the country and then canceled the agreement. It will be a good game for the communists, he was grinning. But Ponzi could not find the opportunity for this. He died the following year, on January 18, 1949, of a clot in his brain. Death found him in the free section of a hospital in Rio de Janeiro. According to the New York Times newspaper, on one side of his bed was an old man coughing badly, and on the other side a nigger lying silently with his eyes on the ceiling. Ponzi's funeral was held with $75, which he raised from money from the Brazilian government. The price was very cheap, even though they didn't get anything in return, he said in a recent interview with his investors. I gave them the best show ever since the landing of the British immigrants to America in 1920, without commitment. Watching me during my performance was comfortably worth $15 million.